there's a piece of research out of Australia that looked at the net worth of people who had kids and didn't have kids, because a lot of the times we focus on the cost. And what they actually found is that over time, their net worth is very similar. So despite the high cost of having kids, it turns out there are other things going on. Sometimes we change our lifestyles because we've had kids and we spend much more time at the playground, or we don't go out as much. Our life, that cost base changes. And sometimes perhaps we are more focused on what we want to do and we make other trade-offs, etc. So I think we should start the episode by saying you haven't made a terrible financial mistake by having a child.
Welcome to Checks and Balances, brought to you by Partners Life. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And today we've got Stephanie Pow, founder of Crayon, on the podcast to talk to us about how much does it cost to raise children in New Zealand, part 2, by your request.
We are back in your life with part 2 of how bloody expensive kids are. And we thought, who should we have on to talk about it? Steph, welcome back to tell us how expensive children are.
Thanks for having me back.
Are they on sale? They're down 20% now. This is why we've got Steph here. It's cheaper.
I think it's safe to say that children are never on sale. They're always just getting more and more expensive.
Premium product.
So in part 1, we spoke about if pretty much projecting out, including parental leave, upgrading your home to be in a better school zone, working 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week, a whole range of different things. Steph, it was very expensive. It made me think about whether the whole system was broken. And I think the difference when you fast forward to 65 between having kids and not having kids was about $3.4 million in my projections in this theoretical world, because obviously you can't pay off your mortgage, invest into assets. Do those numbers surprise you, or do you go like, yeah, kids are expensive?
They definitely are expensive. That's still an eye-watering number. And I think I was looking at a lot of research ahead of this podcast, and there's a piece of research out of Australia that looked at the net worth of people who had kids and didn't have kids, because a lot of the times we focus on the cost. And what they actually found is that over time, their net worth is very similar. So despite the high cost of having kids, it turns out there are other things going on. Sometimes we change our lifestyles because we've had kids and we spend much more time at the playground, or we don't go out as much. Our life, that cost base changes. And sometimes perhaps we are more focused on what we want to do and we make other trade-offs, etc. So I think we should start the episode by saying you haven't made a terrible financial mistake by having a child.
I think that's a really interesting point, Steph, around I'm dealing in a theoretical world in terms of projections, but when you actually do think about it, there are a lot of different components to it. And I compare myself and Michael and our costs and going, there are some areas where I have far bigger costs like daycare, like Hannah only working 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week. But it is fair to say you are not cheap.
No, I'm not cheap. But it's the thing, right? Like I still do the bills, do the stuff I need to do to hit my goals. It's just that the discretionary income for Mike is probably a little bit higher than James.
Can I ask,
Yeah.
Do you think if you've got kids, you're more motivated to earn more money because you've got these responsibilities you have to provide, you want to provide them with a good lifestyle? I know there's potentially no research behind this, but theoretically,
I have Beef Wellington the cat. Are you saying I'm not motivated to earn for Beef Wellington?
Beef Wellington's hurt you.
Yeah, I know. He broke my finger.
I think that's a really tricky one to answer, right? It's going to be very individual. People have different caring responsibilities. It might not be children. It might be parents. It might be other whānau. So I think it's fair to say in general, though, having a purpose and having a goal, and you would see this with your clients, there's a lot of research that shows if you've got a financial goal, you generally perform better. So whether that goal is to provide for your child or to set yourself up or someone else up, that's going to motivate you.
Yeah. So you went away and did some research for us, Steph, and you kind of had a look at some of the unavoidable expenses around kids. Can you talk us through some of those numbers that you went away and found?
So the USDA, so US Department of Agriculture, actually tracks the cost of raising a child to the age of 18. And I bet you're thinking, well, when Cooper turns 5, he goes to school. Surely those expensive daycare fees disappear. I'm on the home run. It's going to be a great time.
They look after themselves, right?
Yeah.
It's on the downhill slope. Yeah.
He can talk, he can walk,
Yeah.
But actually, when you look at the USDA chart, from 0 to 18, it just steadily goes up. And then the teen years, it really goes up.
Yeah.
So
Mike's still expensive for his parents.
Yeah.
So spoiler alert, having a child doesn't get cheaper as they age.
I've got some clients where they're still funding their like 40-year-old kids.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, guys. At some point, we need to cut the cord.
Yeah.
We can touch on that part
Yeah.
later. So what are the big costs that are unavoidable, right? Number one is housing. So USDA found that about 28% of that cost is related to housing, whether it's a bigger home to a better school zone that you touched on earlier. I think you had an episode with Alexandra Martelli about buying in a grammar zone.
Yeah.
And was it an extra $200,000 just to live in that area,
Yep.
as an example? So housing, number one. Number two is food. So at about 18% of that total cost. Otago University tracks how much it costs to feed someone per week. Most expensive, teenage boy, at about $120 a week. More expensive than a grown man. So you think about, as they get older, they eat a lot more. And then the third is transportation, which is about 15%. And that's either because you might need a bigger car or a second car, or simply you're just traveling a lot more. You think that cost of fuel and activities, and then they learn to drive, and then your insurance premiums go up.
And then they crash.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're the main costs if you think about it. And even in New Zealand, for transportation, public transport subsidies ended on the 1st of May this year. So it's kind of full freight.
I'm just thinking about the example of having a teenage boy. So that's like $6,000 a year if it's roughly 120 a week.
Yeah.
So you've got 2 teenage boys. Mike, that's $12,000 a year that could hypothetically be going onto your mortgage. In terms of like chipping away, that'd make a huge difference.
Oh,
over time.
that'd be enormous. Yeah, yeah. And but that's kind of what all of this is about, right? Is like it's that allocation of cost versus the opportunity cost of being able to do something with it. So I think it's important to just kind of remember that kids aren't just a cost, and that there's potentially some utility there as well.
Utility, eh?
Well, it's the
Interesting.
economic term for like enjoyment.
Joy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's probably some diminishing marginal utility with them over time, but it is what it is.
Yeah, on the last episode we did around this, I was talking about how I spend all this money and Cooper won't even let me read him a bedtime story because he's all just about mama, and I can't read him a bedtime story. I quoted Gerald the Giraffe last time. One of his other favorites is Pig the Pug.
It's a great book.
Oh, there's a whole series behind it, isn't it? How does it go? Pig.
I don't know.
Pig is a pug, and I'm sorry to say he was greedy and selfish in most every way. He was friends with a sausage dog, Trevor, and when was he nice to him? I'll tell you never. Some great stories about learning to share in there, Mike. I might send it to you.
Wait, did you just drop the LSB? Like, can we? Do you just like freestyle?
Yeah, I can freestyle children's books all day. Steph, I'm sure you have a couple in the... I won't put you under the pressure to do it all.
I feel like you need your own channel for this.
Just James freestyling kids' books. Okay.
But yeah, let's move on. So, Steph, in the last episode we talked about some of these big costs, particularly at the start of having kids, the house, working less, daycare. I saw this Instagram reel. Maybe we'll put it in the down in the notes or something, where it's like you're working away and then you look and go, there's a photo frame in front of you, and you go, the reason why I work every day, and it's the picture of the daycare center because that's where all your earnings go. But there's a hell of a lot of costs outside of just what we spoke about last time that are quite variable. Can you talk us through some of those?
Yeah, so I put this in more maybe the discretionary bucket. Although the first one being education, not really discretionary at all.
I guess to a degree.
But variable.
Yeah.
So obviously public-private being the two contrasts. So public, we have free public education in New Zealand, but I think the question is it all free? Well, there's no fees, right? But then there are other costs such as uniforms, camps, school trips, extracurricular activities, etc. So one research paper actually looked at what's the cost of free education here. And at the low end, I think it's over 5 years. In high school, it was a few $100s.
Yeah.
And there is some government assistance available there if you're struggling. But at the high end, it was about $20,000 over the 5 years. there's always donations as well, often
Yeah.
on
That's
the
what I was
school
thinking
invoice.
about as well.
Like, I distinctly remember there being school fees, and I went to Westlake Boys, which is a public school. And like, I guess it was discretionary, but it was not pitched as discretionary. It was like either like you pay this or your kid doesn't go to like sports day or whatever. Yeah.
That's right. So, and you can ask to have those donation fees removed, etc., from your invoice, but they're kind of on there by default. So there are still expenses and devices now if you, need an iPad or a laptop, etc. So there are still costs associated with going to a public school, I think is the first thing. Private school, New Zealand, when you look at the fees, some of the, say, Catholic schools tend to be less dear, more in the range, but let's call it $8,000 per year, all the way up to the independent schools that are $25,000. I think I've seen it nudge $33,000 per year. Fun fact: school fee inflation, at least over the ditch, has been going up higher than regular inflation. So the real cost of fees is increasing as well. I would expect somewhat similar here. So that if you think about that, if you want to start in, say, year 7 and go all the way through, you're looking at around 175,000 plus. And again, that's just the fees, right? So there are extra costs on top of uniform. I think a friend recently had their kid kitted out, a couple of grand at the uniform store.
Yeah, there's definitely that with the private school as well, the keeping up with the Joneses and all the other different things. Then instead of you go in school camp an hour down the road, we're going to Japan or whatever it might be. And then there's that peer pressure to go, do we do these things?
Yeah. I would love to see what the average lifespan of a device for a school kid is. Because we have an entire room full of Macs here, an office full of Macs, and eventually they break down. I imagine that the average tenure of a laptop for like a teenage boy is like a matter of months before they just drop it, throw it, break it somehow.
Similar to how long Mike's laptops last.
Yeah.
So I get asked all the time from parents going, can we factor in private school fees in terms of the financial plan? And I just think immediately, I'm like, oh, this is going to hurt, because you add these things up, potentially got 2 kids, you're talking about $400,000 or $500,000 that could be going towards doing something else. And the other thing I find quite weird is sometimes I talk to people and they go, oh, Susie's going to go to the private school, but little Timmy, we don't really think he's going to go to the private school. Like sometimes they split the kids out as well. I don't know if that's decision based off, how smart they think the kid might be.
Yeah, that's really an A team and a B team, eh? That's hard to grapple with from a child's perspective.
It might also depend. I've seen it on the particularly if it's different gender, the quality of the public girls' school versus the public boys' school in your area.
Yeah.
So sometimes it might be actually there's a really great public girls' school, but the boys' school not so good, or the other way around.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
that's a nice way to frame it for the kids. Yeah.
So, James, before we continue, I have got a special announcement.
Have you started sticking to your budget?
Absolutely not.
You finally made it as an after-hours DJ.
I wish. And the thing is, we have got a brand new podcast partner, Partners Life.
You mean the award-winning insurance provider with over 300,000 Kiwis insured?
Yep, they're also a New Zealand-operated company, and they are passionate about increasing financial literacy amongst Kiwis.
Sounds like a great match. Where can I learn more about them?
Check out their website in our show notes below.
Really thought DJ Magic Mike was going to be a global sensation for a second.
You know what I found out recently is that there is insurance at a private school if one parent dies. So for the fees.
Wow. That is quite crazy.
Yeah.
So it's just, I guess it's just the life insurance. I wonder what the margin is on that. Like, I wonder what...
And I don't know if every school has it, right? I think they have to sign up for the policy and pay for the policy. I thought it's very interesting that if one parent passes away while that child's enrolled or at that school, and it doesn't have to be the breadwinner parent or the main earner.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's just a parent, that their fees are paid for.
I wonder what the margin is on that. Like, let's say let's say it's $100,000 for James to go to school. We insure us at $100 a week, and for the rest of James's tenure at school, it's going to cost, say, $50,000. I bet you that life insurance policy is $150,000, and they take the $100,000 and pay for James to go to school. Yeah, I 100% guarantee it.
Yeah. The other costs are again in the discretionary bucket, but you think about travel. So it's not just extra plane tickets, another hotel room potentially, etc. But it's the fact that you've got to travel at the most expensive times, aka school holidays. So whenever I get a sale notification, you go on blackout periods, always school holidays. And also that you will probably pay for convenience. Do you want to be doing a 36-hour layover with your child? Probably not.
No.
So time is precious, but also you really don't want to be stuck in the airport or etc. So you'll probably pay a bit more to have a better route, for example. So those things also add up when it comes to travel. Healthcare. So again, arguably not that discretionary, but certainly you think about tonsils out or
Wisdom teeth.
Yep, all of that. Braces, they're $5,000, $10,000 procedures. In some cases, you can go through the public system, but I had a quick look online last night. If you're not urgent, then you're looking at wait times of 1 to 2 years, right? And not everything will be funded. So that's where maybe health insurance might prove to be quite helpful depending on what they do cover or you're out of pocket.
Yeah, my parents dropped quite a bit on these teeth. I tell you, I had the face mask, Steph. So I had like the braces, the rubber bands pulling out to the face mask that I'd have to wear at night. Then I had the braces. I think I had some surgery as well. And then I had like a top plate, and my dad had a little screwdriver thing. And every night he would like crank it to like slowly widen my jaw. I can't imagine how much that costs.
You could be lucky like my parents. We went to the orthodontist and they were like, yep, he can have braces. And I was like, nah, not happening. And they were like, okay, cool. Sweet as.
Yeah. Coming back to the travel component as well, the other thing I think about is, so my wife, Hannah, she's from Invercargill. Shout out to the mighty South. So Cooper is just under 2. So at the moment, he's still getting free. He doesn't need his own ticket. So he sits on mum's lap. It's chaos, but it's half the cost. From next month, when he turns 2, he now needs to pay for his own ticket.
That's right.
So suddenly, Hannah's trip to go see her family has doubled.
Yeah. So what are you doing in between now and then? You flying them to LA or something? Just to clock up those miles?
Around the world trip.
Yeah.
I still need to pay for everybody else. So we won't be doing that. Yeah. So this is when the kids are younger. And then there's going a little bit beyond, right? When the kids start to get a little bit older. What are some of those costs?
Well, to add to those other costs, activities, right? So and particularly if your child is really gifted at something, or, I've spoken to parents, they're dropping, $10,000 plus on, because their child's really great at a sport or dance or what have you. All of those can add up. And obviously great sports people and talent can come from anywhere, and you can get support in other ways. But certainly you do see parents dropping quite a bit. I remember one of my a former colleague had a kid who loved go-karting, which is a very, very expensive sport to fund your child in. So, again, discretionary, but if you had a kid who loved something, you'd probably want to be able to support them in doing that.
Were you like a gifted sports kid at school, Steph? Or?
No, but I grew up in Australia, so everybody plays, right?
Yeah. I was gifted at being a pain in the ass.
You
about it, to be honest.
Yeah, you had a master's in that. You still do to this day. I'm hoping Viv and Chris did not spend any money on your sporting endeavors.
I do remember at age 15 or 16, I had to go get my driver's license like by the Friday, because on the Saturday we were going drag racing. And we had a kids dragster. We had 3. We had a big one, a middle one, and then our one. And the kids one was not like a child's dragster. It was like a full-blown rail car with parachutes and stuff.
Whoa.
And so for some reason, my dad thought it'd be a great idea to chuck me in that at like age 16. It was quite wild.
I can see Chris getting into that. What are some of the costs, Steph, once the kids start to get a little bit older?
So you're thinking 18, adult, under the eyes of the law. I'm a parent. I'm going to go sit on the beach, enjoy my hard-earned
empty nester.
Yep,
See you later.
See ya.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, also not the case. So if your child chooses to go into university, fees for there start around $6,500-ish per year and can go quite a way up, especially if you choose something like medicine. You can get a loan, obviously, or a job for your child as well, etc. Always a good way to do it. But, we do see, or I do hear from parents who want to help out with some of those university fees. And then if your child has aspirations to study overseas, you're thinking about US university or Oxbridge or something like that, that's certainly something I hear more about. then you're looking at a few $100,000 there.
Yeah. The other one as well is, say the kids want to go, down to Dunedin if the family's based in Auckland or whatever, and then you've got to pay for the dorm for the first year, and that's, I think, quite expensive. I think that's like 15-20 grand. So that's just another cost on top.
Bank of mum and dad. I'm sure you see that in your line of work all the time. They are estimated to be the 5th largest lender in New Zealand, bigger than TSB, than Kiwi Bank. So that's another, with housing being so expensive, parents wanting to help out with the deposit. That's another potential cost.
Mike, on that one, what percentage of first home buyers would get help from their parents?
95%.
Wow, that's crazy.
95%. I'd say probably 80% get some sort of cash. Well, maybe like 70 to 75% get some sort of cash, from their parents, whether that's a loan, a gift, an early inheritance, money from a trust somehow. But I would say 90 to 95% get some assistance from their parents in some way.
And what would be the average contribution that the parents would make?
Probably 10 to 20,000. I think, maybe a little bit. Yeah, maybe between 10 and 20 is probably what we usually see, but we've had $900,000, $800,000 gifts. Yeah.
It's a completely different game, eh? And you go like 10 or 20 grand, say you're trying to buy an $800,000 house, you 10% deposit, that can get you 25% closer to the goal.
Oh, it's huge. It actually is huge. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So there's university costs, there's helping them into the home. What other cost stuff we got?
Then there's just kind of just helping them in general. And you touched on some parents still funding their kids at 40. Well, surveys show parents 44% were helping with buying groceries for their adult children.
Wow.
Another 20-odd% helping out with bills, like they might still be on the family mobile plan or health insurance.
Often see the health insurance. Yeah. And you just hang on to it for as long as you can.
Nobody says anything.
Nah.
Just one day you get the phone call.
Yeah.
And it might just be living rent-free at home, but that could mean as a parent, you can't downsize, right? You can't free up that capital or pay off that mortgage, etc. So sometimes even if it's not a direct assistance with the house deposit, it could be, you can stay at home to build up the savings. The average age people expect to leave home now is 27.
Where should you leave home?
I'm not too sure because I left, come back.
How about you, Steph?
Oh, I think 24. 24.
Yeah, I went down to Dunedin at 18. Then I came back to Auckland to start a grad program. I was getting sent ads on Trade Me for rentals after like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be me, Mike, would it? Like, I wouldn't be the problem in that scenario. That's on them.
No, it's not us.
Yeah, good. I mean, in terms of having the kids still at home, I'm just thinking, the power bill is going to be more expensive. The food's going to be more expensive. I remember my sister and I, when we were like, just started our first job, I would definitely go home and just straight up steal food from my parents' pantries. I would just like grab a bunch of stuff.
Like Sunday night, you're like, oh, I'll come around for dinner.
Yeah.
And groceries.
Yeah.
The other one we were talking about, Mike, before filming was like help with your first car.
Yeah.
So a lot of parents will go like, I want my kids to be like safe and not in like a death trap. Contributions with cars would be pretty common, right?
I imagine they are. I got, I guess there's different ways to do it. I got my first car, which arguably was a death trap, and it got stolen. I think like the second week I had it from outside school. Which, to be honest, I think the Lord works in mysterious ways. That was probably like an absolute blessing. Otherwise, I would have wrapped around a power pole. But yeah, I think I got like 10 grand for mine.
Yeah, we did the thing with, I saved $5,000 and for every dollar my dad contributed to it. And I had a Honda Integra and it had one of those stereos that they put into the car with the face. And we lived in Green Lane and it was when like Onehunga was still kind of the hood. And my car got broken into at least 4 times and the stereos ripped out. Yeah,
mine was a GSR, so like a turbo. Like it was like I should not have had that car.
Yeah, cool. I mean, Steph, you've listed off a hell of a lot of costs. Anything else we need to think about before I go home and cry?
I think you think about teenage years, they just get more expensive. Might think about phone, clothing, just they kind of want more stuff at that age. So that's probably also why the chart goes up that way. But I think you had factored in, $20,000 of random costs each year. That probably goes
Yeah.
up a bit as they get older.
That's right. And with that first episode we did, we then so we ran the 2 sets of projections. Without kids, you're like over $3 million better off come retirement. So I've done another set of projections, and I've gone, let's factor in for those extras, university costs, helping with a car, helping with the first home. It broke the projections. It did not work. And this was on a household of $300,000 household income. So I guess a big part is going, if you're looking at all these things you want to be able to do for your kids and you're going, I don't know how we're going to be able to afford this. Your boy talks to a lot of people. Your boy knows average incomes. Do not feel bad if you're doing this. Because I think the other thing is probably in terms of the social pressure, you might feel obliged to help with these things because you want to help your kids. You're seeing other people, doing these things, but you just got to make sure you're not doing anything that's sacrificing your own future.
Yeah. All right. So what's a positive stat to wrap this up? Someone give me something here.
Come on, Steph.
I think it just goes back to the top, which is when you do look at the actual data, people who have kids are not worse off from a net worth perspective in the long term, right?
Yeah.
That's you find a way around. There are people have raised children for millennia in all sorts of circumstances, and you find a way.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, Steph, thank you very much for your time. Just before we wrap it up, just tell us a little bit about Go Crayon so we can give it a little bit of a plug.
Oh, thanks. Crayon reduces financial stress in the moments that matter. The one we're focused on right now is parental leave, so not quite yet the later years, but there's a lot of information on our website for both parents-to-be, employers to figure out the parental leave game.
Yeah, and there's lots of good information on the website as well, so make sure to go check that out. We'll pop that in the notes. Steph, thank you very much for joining us. Much love to Partners Life for sponsoring this episode. Please subscribe to the channel, give us a review, give us a like, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.